Brock Lesnar was supposed to be untouchable. The Beast Incarnate, the man who conquered UFC and WWE, the genetic freak who made grown men look like children in the ring. But right now, his empire is crumbling, and what's happening behind the scenes is darker than anything you've seen on television. This isn't just about a wrestler losing his spot, this is about a man watching everything he built turn to ashes, and the reasons why will shock you to your core. Before we dive deep into this nightmare, make sure you hit that subscribe button because what we're about to reveal will change how you see professional wrestling forever. The fall of Brock Lesnar didn't happen overnight. It started with whispers, then turned into allegations that would make your stomach turn. In January 2024, former WWE employee Janelle Grant filed a lawsuit that sent shockwaves through the entire wrestling industry. The lawsuit named Vince McMahon, John Laurinaitis, and WWE as defendants, but buried in those legal documents was a section that mentioned an unnamed former UFC heavyweight champion. The wrestling world knew immediately who that was. The details were disturbing, painting a picture of behavior that went far beyond the tough guy persona Lesnar portrayed on screen. Grant alleged that she was trafficked to this unnamed wrestler, forced into situations that no human being should ever endure. The lawsuit described incidents that took place between 2019 and 2022, a period when Lesnar was at the height of his WWE dominance, main eventing WrestleMania and being treated as the company's most protected asset. WWE's response was swift and brutal. Within days of the lawsuit becoming public, Brock Lesnar vanished from television. He was scheduled to appear at the Royal Rumble in 2024, set for a major storyline that would carry him through WrestleMania season. Instead, he was pulled from all programming without explanation. The company didn't issue a statement about his status, didn't address the rumors, just erased him from their plans like he never existed. For a performer who had been given special treatment for over 2 decades, who worked a limited schedule while getting paid millions, who was allowed to come and go as he pleased, this sudden disappearance spoke volumes. WWE knew something that the public didn't yet fully understand, and they were distancing themselves as fast as possible. The timeline of events reveals just how calculated this removal was. On January 16, 2024, Brock Lesnar appeared on Monday Night Raw, attacking the Judgment Day faction and setting up what looked like a program for WrestleMania. 4 days later, the lawsuit was filed. By January 22, Lesnar was scheduled to appear at the Royal Rumble, but those plans were scrapped. February came and went with no sign of him. March arrived, WrestleMania season was in full swing, and the man who had main event the show multiple times was nowhere to be found. WWE scrambled to rewrite their biggest storylines, bringing in other performers to fill the void Lesnar left behind. The company that had built so much of their modern era around Brock Lesnar was now pretending he didn't exist. Behind the scenes, the situation was even messy than fans realized. Brock Lesnar's contract with WWE was reportedly worth millions per year for a limited number of appearances. He would show up for major events, work a handful of matches, and disappear back to his farm in Saskatchewan. This arrangement had been in place for years, with WWE willing to pay premium money for premium star power. But now that contract became a liability. The company couldn't promote him, couldn't use him on television, couldn't put him in storylines, yet they were potentially still obligated to pay him. Legal teams went into overdrive trying to figure out how to handle the situation. Do they suspend him? Do they terminate his contract? Do they wait for the legal process to play out? Every option came with risks, financial implications, and potential public relations disasters. The wrestling community's reaction was divided and intense. Some fans defended Lesnar, pointing out that he hadn't been charged with any crime and that allegations aren't the same as proof. They argued that he deserved the presumption of innocence, that his career shouldn't be destroyed over accusations that hadn't been proven in court. Other fans were disgusted, saying that the details in the lawsuit were too specific and too disturbing to ignore, that WWE had a responsibility to take these allegations seriously and protect the integrity of their product. Social media became a battleground, with arguments erupting daily about what the company should do, what Lesnar's legacy would be, and whether someone could separate the performer from the person. The debate raged on for months with no clear resolution in sight. What made this situation even more complicated was Brock Lesnar's history and reputation in the industry. For over 20 years, he had been portrayed as the most dangerous man in professional wrestling. His legitimate amateur wrestling background, his successful UFC career, his physical presence, all of it contributed to an aura of invincibility. He was the final boss, the ultimate challenge, the opponent that nobody could defeat without some kind of miracle or interference. WWE had invested so much in building this character that generations of wrestlers had their careers defined by whether they could hang with Brock Lesnar. Now all of that was tainted. Every match, every storyline, every moment where he dominated someone in the ring, it all looked different through the lens of these allegations. The character and the man had become impossible to separate. The financial impact on Lesnar himself was staggering. Beyond whatever WWE might owe him contractually, his entire earning potential evaporated. Merchandise sales stopped. Licensing deals disappeared. The special appearances and conventions that wrestlers used to supplement their income, all gone. Video games had to decide whether to include his character or remove him entirely. Action figure lines were pulled from production. Sponsorship opportunities vanished. For a man who had carefully cultivated a career that would set him up financially for life, who had been strategic about his bookings and his value, watching that empire collapse must have been devastating. The money he made during his peak years was substantial, but the future earnings he was counting on were suddenly not there anymore. WWE's pivot away from Lesnar exposed just how much they had relied on him as a crutch. For years, whenever the company needed a big match or a major angle, they would call Brock. Need someone to break The Undertaker's WrestleMania streak? Call Brock. Need someone to dominate Roman Reigns and make him look like an underdog? Call Brock. Need someone to squash John Cena in shocking fashion? Call Brock. Need someone to give Goldberg a dream match? Call Brock. The company had built so much of their storytelling around his presence that his absence created a massive hole in their creative plans. Suddenly they had to elevate other performers, had to create new stars, had to find different ways to generate interest. Some would argue this was long overdue, that WWE had become too dependent on part-time stars and needed to build for the future, but the circumstances that forced this change were tragic and uncomfortable. The other wrestlers in the locker room had their own complicated feelings about the situation. Some had worked closely with Lesnar for years, had traveled with him, had built their own careers off matches against him. Others had heard rumors about his behavior behind the scenes, stories that never made it to the public but were known within the tight-knit wrestling community. There were performers who felt that Lesnar's special treatment and massive paydays had come at the expense of full-time wrestlers who worked harder for less money. There were others who respected his drawing power and his ability to make matches feel important. Now everyone was watching to see how this would play out, knowing that whatever happened to Lesnar could set a precedent for how the industry handles these kinds of allegations in the future. The legal proceedings moved slowly, as these cases always do. Janelle Grant's lawsuit detailed a pattern of abuse and exploitation that allegedly occurred over several years. The defendants filed motions to dismiss, arguing various legal grounds for why the case shouldn't proceed. Legal experts weighed in on the strength of the allegations, the burden of proof required, the challenges of prosecuting cases involving powerful figures in the entertainment industry. Months passed with updates that raised more questions than answers. Settlement negotiations were rumored but never confirmed. The uncertainty hung over everything, with no clear timeline for when there would be any resolution. Meanwhile, Brock Lesnar remained invisible, his career in limbo, his reputation destroyed regardless of how the legal case eventually concluded. What makes this tragedy even more profound is thinking about what Brock Lesnar's legacy should have been without these allegations. He was a once-in-a-generation talent, a performer who brought legitimacy and credibility to professional wrestling through his amateur background and UFC success. His matches felt different, more intense, more real than typical wrestling fare. He helped bridge the gap between combat sports and sports entertainment, proving that someone could be successful in both worlds. He was a draw, someone who could move the needle in terms of ticket sales and pay-per-view buys. He created moments that will be remembered forever, from conquering the streak to his feuds with Kurt Angle, Eddie Guerrero, and countless others. All of that history now exists in a strange space where fans don't know how to process it or talk about it. The silence from Brock Lesnar himself has been deafening. He has not issued any public statements about the allegations, has not appeared at any wrestling events, has not done interviews or social media posts addressing the situation. His lawyer released a brief statement denying the allegations when they first surfaced, but beyond that, nothing. This silence could be strategic legal advice, could be an attempt to avoid making things worse, or could simply reflect that there's nothing he can say that would fix this. The court of public opinion has largely already made its judgment, and anything he says now will be picked apart and analyzed to death. So he remains at his farm in Canada, living a life completely removed from the spotlight that defined him for so many years. The broader wrestling industry has had to reckon with what this situation says about the culture and environment that existed for so long. Wrestling has always had problems with how it treats women, from the objectification in storylines to the documented cases of harassment and abuse behind the scenes. The Speaking Out movement in 2020 exposed numerous wrestlers and wrestling personalities for their misconduct, leading to some accountability but also revealing how widespread the problems were. The allegations against Vince McMahon and the subsequent lawsuit that mentioned Lesnar are part of that same pattern, a reminder that the industry still has a long way to go in terms of creating a safe and respectful workplace. Every time one of these cases emerges, there are promises of change and reform, but whether those promises translate to real action remains to be seen. For fans who looked up to Brock Lesnar, who bought his merchandise, who cheered for him at shows, this has been a gut-wrenching experience. Wrestling fans invest emotionally in the performers they follow, creating connections that go beyond simple entertainment. When those performers turn out to be very different people than their on-screen characters, when they're accused of heinous behavior, it forces fans to confront uncomfortable truths about the industry they love. Some fans choose to separate the art from the artist, continuing to appreciate Lesnar's matches while condemning his alleged actions. Others can't watch his old matches anymore without feeling sick. There's no right answer to how someone should process these feelings, but the impact is real and lasting. The question of whether Brock Lesnar will ever return to WWE or any wrestling promotion remains unanswered. Even if the legal case somehow resolves in a way that doesn't result in criminal charges, the damage to his reputation might be permanent. Companies have to weigh the financial benefit of bringing back a draw against the public backlash they would face from fans, sponsors, and media outlets. In today's environment, where corporate responsibility and public image matter more than ever, taking a chance on someone with this kind of controversy attached seems unlikely. Lesnar is now in his late 40s, an age where most wrestlers are winding down their careers anyway. The window for any kind of comeback was already closing before these allegations surfaced, and now it might be sealed shut permanently. This entire situation serves as a reminder that nobody is truly untouchable, no matter how dominant they appear or how much money they generate. Brock Lesnar seemed like the one person WWE would never turn their back on, the ultimate protected asset who could do no wrong in the company's eyes. Yet when serious allegations emerged, that protection evaporated instantly. The machine that built him up had no problem tearing him down when it became necessary for business. There's something almost poetic about watching the Beast Incarnate, the man who destroyed everyone in his path, being destroyed himself by the consequences of his own alleged actions. Wrestling is full of cautionary tales about performers who flew too close to the sun, but this one hits different because of how sudden and complete the fall has been. As we watch this tragedy continue to unfold, we're left with more questions than answers. Will there be a trial? Will there be a settlement? Will Brock Lesnar ever speak publicly about what happened? Will WWE ever acknowledge his existence again? Will fans ever be able to watch his matches without this cloud hanging over them? The uncertainty is perhaps the most frustrating part, this limbo state where nothing is resolved but everything is changed. Brock Lesnar's fate is sealed in many ways, his career effectively over, his reputation in ruins, his legacy forever complicated by allegations that paint him as something far worse than any heel character he ever portrayed on television. This is the tragic fate of Brock Lesnar, a story with no winners and no easy answers. If you found this deep dive valuable and want to stay updated on more shocking wrestling stories that the mainstream won't tell you, subscribe to our channel right now and turn on notifications so you never miss when we expose the truth about your favorite superstars.